I found out I'd been cut off on a Wednesday, not even a dramatic Wednesday, just the kind with weak sunlight and a lukewarm cup of coffee. My name is Mara Hale. I'm 27, a junior architectural designer trying to fight my way up in a competitive firm, and the daughter of a man who built a financial empire but somehow missed the basic mechanics of parenting. I live alone in a tiny fourth-floor walk-up that smells like old wood and fresh paint, and despite coming from money, I pay my own rent, my own utilities, and my own way, mostly because I've never trusted the emotional strings attached to my father's version of generosity. Still, seeing the email at 9:14 a.m. hit harder than I wanted to admit. It was from his assistant, politely informing me that, per Mr. Hale's updated directives, my monthly stipend had been discontinued cold, efficient. No explanation or courtesy call. Just a financial guillotine dropped through my inbox. I could practically feel the fingerprints on the decision, long, manicured, and painted in whatever seasonal shade my stepmother Lena was currently favoring. She'd been in the picture for 3 years, and in that time she'd perfected the art of gentle sabotage. Sweet voice, soft smile, and a talent for repositioning herself as the fragile flower in any room, even when she was the one pruning everyone else down. And me? I'd never fit the image she wanted for my father's family. Too independent, too opinionated, too aware of the way she lingered near his office door to catch conversations not meant for her. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that 2 weeks earlier, my late grandfather's estate had quietly finalized everything of his, land, investments, the trust he'd never spoken about, had been left to me. Not to my father, to me. Signed, sealed, and now sitting safely under the guardianship of lawyers who owed my grandfather decades of loyalty. So as I sat there rereading the email that was supposed to leave me desperate or devastated, all I felt was a sharp, steady resolve. They thought they'd cornered me. They thought they'd cut me off. They had no idea what I now controlled. I stood, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. If Lena believed she'd pushed me out of my father's life like a nuisance, she had a surprise coming I wasn't showing up as the girl she thought she'd crushed. I was coming as the heir she never saw coming. I drove to my father's estate. Their estate now, I supposed, with the kind of calm that felt almost unreal. The long, winding driveway was exactly as I remembered it. Ancient oaks forming an archway overhead, their branches filtering the morning light into shifting patches across the asphalt. I used to think the drive felt magical, like an entrance to another world. Now it felt like a tunnel leading straight into a confrontation I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. The security guard lifted the gate without hesitation, recognizing my car. Apparently, no one had updated that directive yet. I pulled up to the circular front, the fountain bubbling as cheerfully as ever, as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. That was the thing about this house. It always looked peaceful from the outside. The chaos seeped in, only once you crossed the threshold. I stepped inside, the marble floors echoing under my boots. The foyer smelled like the usual blend of fresh lilies, old money, and meticulous housekeeping. Familiar, but also foreign. Like someone had rearranged everything just enough to make me feel like a guest. Rather than a daughter, Lena appeared almost immediately. Of course she did. She came floating down the staircase with that practiced elegance of hers. Silk blouse, soft curls, eyes widening just a second too late to be genuine when she saw me. "Mara," she said warmly, hand fluttering to her chest. "What a surprise." "Is it?" I asked. A flicker crossed her expression, gone too quickly for anyone but me to catch. "Well, your father's in a meeting, but I can let him know you're here." "No need," I said. "You and I can talk first." That stopped her. Just a small stiffening of her shoulders. She hid it well, but I noticed. I'd spent years noticing. She gestured toward the sitting room, trying to maintain her serene composure. Of course. Tea? I won't be staying long. Inside the sitting room, the sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Illuminating every polished surface, Lena sat with her legs crossed, folding her hands in her lap like she was preparing for a charity interview. I assume, she began delicately, this is about the financial adjustment. Cutting me off, I corrected. Her smile was gentle, measured. Your father and I both felt that encouraging you toward financial independence would be good for you. You're a smart young woman, Mara. You don't need allowances anymore. I leaned back in the chair, studying her. And this was your idea. She didn't flinch, but her lashes lowered just a fraction. We make decisions together. Interesting, I said softly, because your timing is impeccable. She blinked. Timing? 2 weeks, I replied. That's how long it's been since grandfather's estate finalized. Her smile faltered, not fully, but enough. A tiny hairline crack in porcelain. I fail to see the relevance, she said, but her voice had thinned. Oh, I think you see it. I let the words linger. You thought you were cutting me off. You thought you were pushing me out. But you don't know a thing about what I have now. Her jaw tightened, the first honest expression I'd seen from her all morning. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned forward, dropping the act entirely. What exactly, she asked quietly, do you think you've inherited, Mara? I smiled. Slow, deliberate, everything. The word hung in the air between us, thick as smoke. Lena didn't react at first, not visibly. She just studied me, her dark eyes flickering the way they did when she was quickly recalibrating. Most people mistook her calm for composure. I'd learned it was calculation. I see, she murmured after a long moment. Your grandfather always did have unconventional ideas about legacy. Translation: he didn't trust your father as far as he could throw him. A truth everyone in our circles knew, but no one ever said aloud. I rested my elbow on the arm of the couch, watching her carefully. The trust is substantial. His properties, investments, all of it, transferred to me outright. I thought you should know before you plan any future adjustments to my independence. Her tongue pressed against her cheek. Another tell. She hated being outmaneuvered. This isn't a competition, Mara, she said gently, but her tone had sharpened, like silk sliding over a blade. No one is trying to harm you. I gave a humorless laugh. Cutting your husband's daughter off financially without discussing it with her? That's not harm. Her eyes cooled. It was the right thing. Your father agreed. You mean he agreed after you pitched it to him? She didn't deny it. She didn't have to. Silence stretched between us, taut and electric. Outside the window, the garden swayed in the soft breeze, peaceful, oblivious. Inside, the air felt colder. Finally, Lena sighed, adopting her favorite wounded bird expression. You've always assumed the worst of me. I've tried, Mara, truly, but you've never allowed me in. And maybe that's because you've been trying to replace me since the day you met Dad. The mask slipped. Finally, fully. Her lips tightened, her eyes sharpened, and the softness she'd held like a shield evaporated. You don't understand what your father needs, she said, the sweetness gone. You never have. You think because you're his daughter, you get to dictate his world. But I keep this family functioning. I protect him from unnecessary stress. Unnecessary stress like having his only child around? I asked. Her smile returned, this time thin and razor-edged. Like letting him cling to the past. He needs clarity, stability. I help him make decisions without emotional clouding. I stared at her, realization settling in with eerie calm. She genuinely believed she was saving him. from me. "And what about me, Lena? What do you think I need?" I asked softly. She blinked. "You? You need structure boundaries. You've always been unfocused. Your father worried about that. Letting go of the stipend was an act of love, even if you're too upset to see it." "Upset?" I said, rising slowly. "No, I'm enlightened." She stood as well, but I towered by an inch. It mattered. "You can tell my father I came by," I said, picking up my bag. "You can also tell him I'm done trying to fit into whatever version of his life you've curated." "You think he'll choose you over me?" she asked quietly, not mocking, not timid, just curious. I paused at the door, looking back at her. "I don't need him to choose. I'm choosing myself." I lifted my chin, and I'm not the one who should be worried. For the first time since meeting her, Lena looked genuinely unsure. And that, I realized, was the beginning of her unraveling. I stepped out of the room, but she called after me, voice low and sharp. "Does he know?" I didn't turn around. "Not yet." And her quick, indrawn breath told me everything I needed to know. For the first time, Lena Hale was afraid. I didn't expect to run into my father on my way out, but fate has a sense of humor like that. I'd barely stepped into the hallway when his office door opened and he emerged with a stack of files tucked under his arm. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, tired, lines etched deeper around his mouth. Success ages people faster than failure ever could. "Mara?" he said, blinking as if I were an apparition. "Hi, Dad." He glanced behind me toward the sitting room. Were you speaking with Lena?" "Yes." I let the word hang, unblemished. "We had a conversation." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture from his youth, one that showed up when he was uncertain. "She didn't tell me you were coming." "She didn't know until I arrived." He nodded slowly, studying my face like he wasn't sure how to read me. "Is everything all right? You look resolute." "I am." A flicker of something, unease, guilt, passed through his eyes. "You received the email." "Hard to miss," I replied, "though I'd have appreciated hearing it from you directly." He exhaled heavily and leaned against the wall, as if the marble beneath him could carry the weight he couldn't. "Mara, I thought this would help you." "Help me?" I repeated. "By blindsiding me?" "You've always been capable. Not that I ever doubted that," he said carefully, the way someone navigates a minefield. "But I've also worried you were holding on to the past, relying on old routines. I thought, maybe this would push you to grow." "And was that your idea?" I asked softly. "Or Lena's?" His mouth tightened, the faintest crease forming. "She offered perspective, but the decision was mine." Translation: she planted the seed and he watered it without questioning where it came from. I took a slow breath. "Dad, do you know why Grandfather didn't leave anything to you?" His eyes flicked up sharply. He hadn't expected that. Not here. Not now. "Mara, I don't think—" "He trusted me," I cut in gently. "More than you. Enough to give me everything, even though you were his son." Color drained from his usually composed expression. Shock first, then confusion, then something like hurt. "Everything," he echoed. I nodded. "The trust, the land, the investments, all of it." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Not because he was angry. I knew my father well enough to recognize when he was unraveling something quietly, painfully, internally. Finally, he set the files down on a console table and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on him before. Regret, unfiltered and raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Why didn't you?" I countered. He closed his eyes. "Mara, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know if I had." "But you didn't," I said softly. "You acted without asking me a single question, without trusting me, without giving me the respect you'd give any stranger in your boardroom." He flinched. Silence wrapped around us, heavier than the air in the house had ever felt. I could almost hear the gears turning behind his stern composure. The events of his life, the choices he'd made, the woman he'd married, the daughter he'd distanced, colliding at once. "Lena said," he began. I held up a hand. "Dad, I don't need to know what she said. I need to know what you believe." He looked at me for a long, aching moment, and then his voice cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough for the truth to spill through. "I think I've made a terrible mistake." The admission landed between us like a shard of glass, sharp, painful, irreversible. For the first time in years, my father saw me not as an obligation or extension of his legacy, but as a woman standing on her own power. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of me, but of what he'd allowed. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps, the unmistakable sound of Lena lingering just out of sight, listening. The balance of power in this house had shifted, and we all knew it. My father didn't seem to hear Lena's footsteps behind us, but I did. They were soft, controlled, measured, exactly how she moved when she wanted to gather information without being seen. The problem for her was simple. I wasn't a child anymore. And this wasn't a house where she got to hold the reins unchallenged. "Dad," I said gently, keeping my voice steady, though my pulse hammered in my throat, "I'm not here to punish you, or to take anything from you. I came because I couldn't let her version of things be the only one you heard." He looked older now, more fragile in a way I'd never associated with him. The man who'd conquered markets, intimidated competitors, and filled headlines looked uncertain in front of his own daughter. "She said you didn't want to be involved anymore," he said quietly, "that you preferred distance, that you blamed me for everything that went wrong after the divorce." My chest tightened, not because it wasn't partly true, but because of who he'd heard it from. "Dad," I said softly, "did you ever ask me?" He swallowed. "I thought she was helping, filling in the cracks." He glanced briefly toward the edge of the hallway, but Lena stayed hidden. I didn't realize she was widening them. His words weren't accusatory. They were stunned, like he was only just understanding the shape of the life he'd been living. "She fed you a story that made you feel needed," I said, "like she was protecting you. But what she was really doing was isolating you, from friends, from colleagues, from me." He looked pained, truly pained. "I didn't want to lose you, Mara." "Then why did you let it happen?" His breath shuddered. "Because she made me believe I already had." There it was, the quiet confession at the rotten core of everything, the loneliness he'd never talked about, the fear she'd exploited, the guilt he clung to like a faithful companion. I stepped forward and rested a hand on his arm. He startled a bit, then relaxed into the contact as if it had been years since he'd felt it. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You just stopped looking." Behind me, a sharp inhale broke the moment Lena stepped fully into view now. No more hiding, no more graceful illusions. Her expression was tight, her composure riddled with hairline cracks. She was still beautiful, still polished, but the certainty she always carried was gone. "Jonathan," she said, tone trembling with righteous indignation she didn't truly feel, "she's twisting everything I never—" "Stop!" My father's voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It landed in the space between us like a verdict. Lena blinked, stunned. He straightened, and for the first time in years, he looked like the man whose shadow my childhood had lived beneath. Not cold, not distant, but decisive. No more. No more decisions about my daughter without my daughter. No more managing my relationships. No more curating my life. Her lips parted. I was trying to help. "Whose help benefits you the most?" I asked quietly. Her gaze snapped to me, sharp as glass. You think you've won something? Because of a trust fund? I smiled, not triumphant, not cruel, just steady. I didn't win anything, I said. I inherited what was meant for me, what grandfather believed I deserved, and the only thing I want now is clarity. My father turned to Lena, exhaustion settling into his features. I need time, alone, and I suggest you give Mara the space and respect she didn't get from either of us. The silence that followed was suffocating. For her, not for me. This was the first time she'd ever been dismissed, ever found herself outside the inner circle she'd curated so carefully. Her eyes hardened, chin lifting with one last scrap of pride. "This isn't over," she said softly. "No," I replied. "It's just beginning." She left without another word. My father watched her go, then sagged a little beside me as though decades of misplaced trust had finally caught up to him. "I'm sorry," he said, not formally, not defensively, but honestly. "For all of it, and I don't expect forgiveness today, but I hope you'll let me try." I took a slow breath. The house felt different now, not colder but cleaner, like the air had finally shifted. "I'm here," I said, "and that's a start." He nodded, eyes glassy with relief. We stood together in the quiet hall, two people rebuilding something that had cracked long before Lena ever entered our lives. Not because of money, not because of inheritance, but because we finally saw each other, clearly, painfully, truthfully. And for the first time in years, I believed that might actually be enough.